Today, I want to look at three questions. Why did this war between the United States and Iran start? How will this war end? And what will happen after this war ends? And to answer these three questions, we need to discuss the nature and structure of our reality. And the first thing you need to understand, which is very hard, is that our world is a hallucination. It's a collective fantasy, all right? So to understand this idea, let's look at Plato's allegory of the cave, okay? Plato's allegory of the cave. And so in this cave, we're deep inside the earth and it's dark. There's some light coming in, but not much. And we're all chained in a line together, okay? And there's about 1 million of us. We're on the floor and we're chained to the ground. And we can't really move. We can't get up, we can't move around. Even our necks are shackled. So we can't turn around and see the world around us. Okay, so there's about 1 million of us all sitting down and staring at a wall together, okay? And this wall is blank. Behind us is great fire. And there are people around this fire, okay? We don't know who they are, but they are free to move around. And what they do is this: they take puppets, and then they reflect the puppets onto the wall, creating shadows. And we're mesmerized by these shadows, because before we're staring at a blank wall, and now there are these moving shadows. And we think these shadows are real because we don't know any better. So we give them names. Okay, we give them names and we create a language in order to tell stories about these shadows. And this becomes really our collective reality, okay? So another way of saying this is that reality is a collective conscious which is really a hallucination. Okay? All right. So there are certain things about this reality that we need to keep in mind. Okay? So first of all, what's really important to understand is that what creates this reality is our conscious, our imagination, our perception. Not anyone else, us, okay? So in other words, the wealth in the society is our consciousness. The amount of thought we put into something. And so let me give you an example. Let's just say that I were to ask you to make a vase to sell on the marketplace, okay? While you're making this vase, if you are listening to music, if you are chatting with a friend, if you're not fully conscious and focused and attentive about making this vase, it won't be very good. But if you are completely focused on creating the most beautiful vase you can, and you're not distracted by anything, then this vase will be beautiful and therefore more valuable in the marketplace. Okay? So in other words, it is our conscious attention that creates wealth in this world. And it is really money or capital that extracts and stores our consciousness and turns it into wealth. All right? So that's a really important concept that most people don't understand, but you need to understand this if we are to understand the nature of reality itself. Okay, so that's the first thing you need to understand. This reality is structured to extract our consciousness in order to create wealth for the elite, for these people. Okay, and historically, there have been different mechanisms that you can use in order to extract and store wealth. All right, so you have maybe religion, okay? And so think of pyramids, right? Because pyramids in Egypt are able to focus your attention and motivate you to do certain actions, okay? To engage in religious worship. but really any temples. So that's one form of capital. Another form of capital, of course, is the idea of stories. Homer, right? Homer is the father of Greek civilization because he wrote the Iliad and the Odyssey, which is able to focus people's attention and drive them to great things. Then you, of course, in today's world, you have the Bible. And the main mechanism to extract and store wealth in today's world, of course, is the US dollar. Now, but there's another force that's being created in order to replace the US dollar. And this is called artificial intelligence. All right, so what we'll discuss later on is that there's actually a war going on for the soul of humanity, for the human consciousness between the US dollar, the old world order, and artificial intelligence, the new world order, okay? But I want you to keep this in mind. All right, so that's the first thing I want you to understand. Second thing that I need you to understand is that these people, we don't know who they are, okay? But what we do know is that they don't force us to do anything. There's not enough of them, okay? The way they maintain power is through manipulation and trickery and deception. And we know this because in Plato's allegory of the cave, one day for whatever reason, one guy decides, you know what? I feel as though this is not the real world. I feel as though there's something outside this cave. So he or she starts messing around with the chains and realizes, these aren't chains. These are just like ropes. I can just like get rid of them. And this chain around my neck, it's like a ribbon. I can snap it off. And he doesn't know why he does this, but he does this. He does do this. And when he does this, they don't even care. Like, whatever, man, do whatever you want. And so he releases himself. He's blind because he's been in the dark all his life, but somehow he recognizes that there's this light, okay, outside the cave. And he is compelled to this light. So he's walking, stumbling to this light. And again, they are like watching him. They're like, we don't care. Do whatever you want, man. They don't stop him. He goes out into the light, and now he's outside, and it's pure light, okay? He's left the cave, and at first he's in pain, and he struggles to reorientate himself to this new world, but then eventually he falls in love with this world. It's a beautiful world, and it's like for him, heaven. And he's like, oh my God, this is the real world. The cave is a fake world that we created ourselves. Let me go back there and tell everyone about the truth. And when he goes back, the elite, don't stop him. Like, whatever you want, man, do whatever you want, okay? So they who are in power, you think they have an army, you think they have magic, and you think that they're evil, but really, all their power rests on our belief in their power, okay? They themselves don't have any power except to manipulate us. Okay, that's something you need to understand. Now, the third thing you need to understand is that even though this is a fake world, people don't know this. They think it's real. In fact, they believe it is so real that they are willing to die for it. So that when this man who's seen heaven, who's seen the truth, who's come back to tell everyone, these chains that you have aren't real. We can break free and escape into the real world. If he dares to tell them this, together they will kill him. Okay, do you understand? So in other words, the reality is a hallucination. It's created by us, but we fall in love with it. We're so attached to it psychologically and emotionally that if anyone tells us it's fake, we kill them for it. Okay? So it's these three things I want you to keep in mind as we explore our world. Because our world is actually just Plato's cave. All right, so let me show you how. All right. So, you need a force in order to create this reality, to chain us together, okay? And this force, of course, is called the American Empire. All right, the empire. Basically, just the military. But they themselves don't really want to control this world because they're an army, okay? So what they do is they allow the creation of a financial order, a global financial order, which then constructs the game that we play, okay? And these people then construct the reality that we live in, okay? So this is the global financial order. And what is this global financial order? Well, at the very top is something called the Bank of International Settlements in Basel, Switzerland, okay? The central bank of central banks. Below them is the World Bank, the IMF, International Monetary Fund, which controls the rules of the global financial order. And then below them are something called the central banks, okay? So the Federal Reserve in the United States, the People's Bank of China in China, okay? The Bank of England in England, okay? So together they create the global financial order. And what is the global financial order? It's just to use the US dollar as a main mechanism of wealth extraction and wealth storage, okay? Really simple. The US dollar. Another way of understanding these people is to think of them as the game masters, okay? The ones above us who's constructed the game and controlling the rules of the game as we play it, okay? The game masters. Okay, so once the game has been created with the rules and incentives, now we can play the game. And this game is called the global economy. All right? So when China trades with the United States, when you go off to Europe on vacation, you're all participating in a game created by the financial order, okay? And the purpose of this this global economy is to have everyone play as much as possible so that wealth can be transferred from the world to the United States, the powers that be, okay? And they do this through two mechanisms. The first is the US dollar. So every time you use the US dollar, you're actually paying a tax to America because America has the power to print as much US dollars as it wants, okay? And the second way that it does this is through something called price hierarchy, okay? A price hierarchy. So the global economy is divided into tiers, okay? So resources are considered the cheapest, even though in reality it should be the most expensive, right? Because resources are limited, they're finite. Above resources, of course, is manufacturing. And above manufacturing is knowledge economy. And then the highest is finance, okay? Basically the game masters. All right, so and as we can see, once with this price hierarchy in place, what we can do now is divide the world according to the specialties, okay? So resource, of course, would be Russia. Russia, the Middle East, the GCC, okay? Saudi Arabia, these places, okay? So these places provide resources. Manufacturing then would be China, right? Knowledge would be Europe and the Five Eyes, okay? Basically the Anglosphere, Canada, New Zealand, Australia, Britain, and then finance, of course, the United States. Okay? Sorry. The United States. All right, so as you can see, this is a system that benefits the United States and its allies to the detriment of China and Russia. Okay? But this is how the game is structured. Of course, if the United States doesn't like you, what it can do is not allow you to play this game. And these countries, of course, would be North Korea and Iran, among other countries, okay? So China and Russia isn't happy about the system, but at least they get to play. Iran and North Korea are not even allowed to play the game of the global economy. All right? Now, of course, you can't have people believing that, okay, this entire global economy is structured so that the West can steal resources from everyone else, okay? So what you do is you create another layer called the rules-based international order. Okay, multilateral organizations, which includes the UN and the WTO, okay, World Trade Organization. Okay, this is called the rules-based international order. But it's really controlled by the empire, okay? So all these are just basically shadows on the wall that the empire is creating, projecting, okay? To fool us into behaving the way the empire wants. All right. So now that you have the system in place, what you need to do is indoctrinate people into believing that the system is fair, just, and good, okay? And then you do that through three mechanisms. These three mechanisms, of course, are education, media, and culture, right? What is education? Well, schools, guys, and universities, academia. You think that you go to university to learn knowledge. No, you don't. You go to university to be brainwashed into believing that this system is not just fair, but actually what really makes this system work is the rules-based national order. Okay? You don't even think about empire. So that's education. Then, of course, you have media, which is CNN, BBC, New York Times. Each time you read an article, you think you're receiving news. You're not receiving news. You're being brainwashed into believing that this order is fair, just, and appropriate, okay? A phrase that you'll keep on hearing over and over is rules-based national order. Okay, but it's not a rules-based national order. It's Plato's cave. It's a deception. And the last, of course, is culture, which is Hollywood. And, you know, television shows, sitcoms, okay, things that you absorb every day. There's high culture and there's low culture. All right, so these are three mechanisms in which this order is basically indoctrinated into everyone, so that you don't even know this is a deception. Okay, you believe that this is reality itself, and this is all to create values and norms. Okay, just the way you see the world, which allows for the creation of a legal structure. So that if you break the rules, it's not that the elite will come after you. They don't have to come after you because everyone else will come after you. Okay? If you're that guy who discovers that this is all deception, they'll kill you. Okay? Not the elite, but the people around you will kill you because you're breaking their fantasy. Okay? You're destroying their fantasy. All right? So this is a very effective system.